And good evening, everyone. ESS, Empire State Sports, proudly presents the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show with a special bulletin update for the sports that's going on in New York State. And we got the top of the food chain here with us tonight, Russ Bartlett, who is on the board for the New York State Sports Association, who's going to give us a little bit more info. Our host tonight, Joy Riom, Dave Bartlett, myself. Well, Russ, I guess we're all sitting here shaking our heads and scratching whatever and trying to figure this out. And we're going to hear it in the horse's mouth, and I'm sure you're going to tell us this could change any minute. But let's hear it right from the horse's mouth. What do you got going on?
I would say that I've been doing just as much shaking and scratching as you have. It is, to say the best, a very fluid situation. I think a lot of the things that have happened. Let's go back. Let's go back to when a lot of what we're currently dealing with and the uncertainty has to do with the guidance for sports, for youth sports, that were put out by the governor's office in July. That set of guidelines was written for youth sports. It doesn't really apply to interscholastic sports in a lot of ways. And when schools started up and we were looking for some sort of guidance from the governor's office on, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what can we do, what can't we do, they said, oh, well, we got some guidance coming. So 4 or 5 days later, we got the same youth sports guidelines that had been issued in July with an extra paragraph, maybe. So it left a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questions from everywhere in the state. So in the very last tail end of August, a lot of sections and a lot of school districts were talking about, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much we don't know. I'm sure everybody's heard school districts are looking at a 20% cut in state aid. There's so much uncertainty. There's a perfect storm of things. Let's just put a hold on everything. And I think a lot of the hold had to do with the placement of football as a high-risk sport, and the placement of volleyball as a high-risk sport, and the placement of soccer as a middle to low-risk sport. And it left a lot of people shaking their head and scratching whatever. So in trying to get some answers to that, New York State Public High School Athletic Association tried to put together some guidance. We figure if something's going to happen, let's get out in front of it and give people something to go on. And what we had to do is, there's all a lot of political minefield to wade through with all of this, because if it's perceived that, not just us, but any entity, if it's perceived that you are interpreting the guidance, then you could be setting people on a path that might not be great for them or you. So, what we ended up publishing, I don't know, it was helpful in that, it gave people something sport specific, but it didn't really go a long way towards explaining things. So shortly after that, individual sections around the state started to develop their own theories on what they should do. Section 8 down in Long Island was the first to pull the plug on fall sports. They met as a group and said, all right, we're out. We'll reevaluate this in January. You can always assume whatever Section 8 does, Section 11 is going to do. It's the other end of Long Island. So they started to talk, and then Section 9 and 1 outside of the city started to talk, and it started to spread. And so what we did as a New York State Public High School Athletic Association is reach out to executive directors and say, okay, why are people pulling the plug? What is the reason? If there's uncertainty, can we provide any guidance that might be able to give somebody the opportunity to play something? I think everybody who has talked about kids going back to school this fall has said, right now, kids have been out of school for 6 months. And when they come back, their mental health is important. Their ability to readapt to their peers socially, their emotional well-being is all probably more important in a lot of ways than the academic part of going back to school. Well, I'm pretty sure that anybody will tell you that there is no better way to get to a kid's mental, social, emotional well-being than through sports. So we thought if there's any opportunity we can get anybody an opportunity to get on the field, let's do it. So having heard that, the confusion about what you can and can't do with the high risk sports, we said, okay, let's put those off for right now. Let's say we're going to talk about those and maybe like wedging them into a spring season, maybe not. But let's just take the high risk sports off the table. And can we possibly get the middle to low risk sports going? That seemed to help in a lot of the sections that we're talking about. We use the phrase seceding from the union, but a lot of those sections started to, okay, so maybe we can do this. Superintendents and athletic directors are historically, and I say this as somebody who is one and was the other, for some reason, communication between superintendents and athletic directors is not always fantastic. Athletic directors will identify what it is they want to do and what they could do and would do and should do, but when it comes time to writing the checks, superintendents sometimes step in. So I think a lot of what happened down in Section 8 and Section 11, the athletic directors had sort of tried to band together and say, here's what we could do. The superintendent said, well, you know what, we're not going to let that happen. Up here, our numbers are good. There's really not a lot of talk of cases of COVID yet. We got through the first 2 weeks of school so far. Still nothing. It's very tenuous. Everybody's kind of walking on eggshells. But, I think it's time to give it a go. So Section 10, for instance, starts soccer and cross country. What else, Joe?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Swim's going to hold off.
Okay, so soccer and cross country are going to start on Monday. As of right now, I know the superintendents of most of Section 10 had said that one of the things that they wanted to see happen in order to enable that was for student athletes to wear masks all the time. I'm not sure where that's going to go. I will say, as a superintendent and projecting what the tough things to try to get kids to do through all of this mess, they have proven to be 1,000 times more resilient than the adults have. I think we all said going back to school, there's no way you're going to keep a mask on for 5-6 hours. It's going to be a big problem. You haven't had any problems, and I don't know of anybody that has. So I think given that was where the superintendent said, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it the safest way we possibly can. I know that right now the state guidance says student athletes will wear a mask if they can tolerate it, which is a pretty wide open-ended thing.
As a former cross country runner, I know that I would have had a hard time running with a mask on, but I was also so far behind the pack that I was pretty socially distanced when I was running cross country, so it wasn't a problem.
Yeah. So I know that they're still looking into all the details there, and given that that's Monday's 4 days away, this could change. I don't know how many times between now and then. I know that Section 2, the Capital Region, Section 3, Central New York, Section 6, Buffalo, are still their final decision on what to do with fall sports has not been completely made. Section 5 Rochester area is going ahead. Section 4 has shut down. So right now, 7, 10, 3, maybe 2. That's about it. So.
Okay, so
in
what?
Russ,
Sorry, Joe.
but I was just going to say, so a couple of schools, or a couple of, which would really tap into the North Country, but these are the two things I heard between last night and this morning. From Section 7, I heard that Northern Adirondack has pulled the plug. And from Section 3, 12 of the 16 Frontier League teams, all the Jefferson County teams have pulled the plug.
Yeah.
So they won't be participating in anything. So you can add those to Section 3 and Section 7.
And to the best of my knowledge, I think there has been no official word from Section 3 as of yet. They may have had their vote. They haven't released the results, but I think people have started to say, you can go ahead and tell us we can do whatever we want. What we're going to do is not.
So Russ, just for everybody that's out there, including myself, basically the governor has said it's up to the sections to determine what they want, how they want to participate, how they don't want to participate. Is that basically taking the liability off of him and putting it on the section? I'm trying to. There's a lot of process out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, and this is where I take all of my whatever hats off and just start talking as a guy who's a kid that loved high school sports. This is a tough decision for anybody, one way or the other. You're either potentially opening your kids up to harm, or you're taking one of the best parts of the high school experience away. And both of those decisions suck. And honestly, I think it's a matter of everybody else either wants the cover of making a group decision or having somebody else make that decision for them. So the way I perceive it is the governor's guidelines that were put out are so vague and so ambiguous, and they've kind of thwarted anybody's attempt at specifying what should happen. So that kind of takes the power out of our hands and says, now he's saying, well, yeah, if they want to do it, go ahead. You just have to stick to the guidelines. Well, it turns out that the guidelines, for the most part, are untenable. You can't play football. You can't play volleyball. There's so much that's unknown, and so much that, nobody wants to make that tough decision. If they can get somebody else to legislate a hard conversation out of their life, they're looking to do it. So I think that's really what's happened in all of this, and that sucks for kids, really, a lot.
Yeah. So
I get it's a global pandemic. All
right. So I'm gonna have you pull out your crystal ball here now and look toward winter sports. What have you received from guidance here? Guidance from anybody as far as winter sports moving forward?
For the most part, the overwhelming majority of winter sports fall into the high-risk category. Hockey falls into the high-risk category. Basketball falls into the high-risk category.
Wrestling.
Yeah, wrestling. As of right now, none of the high-risk sports can compete. None of them can engage in contact and practice. And there is kind of an open door on when they're going to address that. The winter sports season the start of the winter sports season for the state has been pushed back to November 30th. And until we get some guidance from the state about the high-risk sports categories, they can practice, but they can't compete. I think we're not going to see. If you're looking for my crystal ball, we're not going to see any guidance from the state on high-risk sports before the end of the calendar year. I think we're going to go into January without competition of winter sports starting.
And one of the things that we had talked about, the three of us, at the very beginning of this, when wondering about sports, we were saying that, seeing what professional sports and college sports did would be kind of a barometer as far as what high school sports were going to do. And, Division I basketball just announced yesterday or the day before what they're going to be doing, and how they're going to go about their season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and like we've said, things here change more than once a day sometime.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, they look at that and what is it? October 14th, college basketball starts.
Yeah.
And
the
they
part
have
about that doesn't bode well for high school sports is if you look at colleges and you look at the pros, the ones that have gotten through it without a major disruption are the ones that have been able to bubble their athletes.
Yeah.
Baseball is playing city by city. Florida had to cancel
several
games. Philadelphia ended up canceling a bunch of games. And those are guys who they can pretty much keep not in a bubble, but as far as traveling, they can control an awful lot.
Yeah.
Hockey seems to have been pretty successful. They have 2 sites?
Yep. Well, one down to one now.
Yeah. Basketball.
But yeah, they had 2.
Basketball's been pretty successful. They're all in one bubble. I think if you look around the colleges, a lot of the Division I college football teams that went back in July to do optional season workouts were good until the students came back. And once the students came back, things went, I just read Penn State had 53 members of the football team test positive in the last week.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's a little scary. The difference is that our numbers here are low. I will continue to say our numbers here are low. I want them to stay low. I think going back to school, what happens over the next couple of weeks is going to tell us a lot. I think Potsdam, I don't want to say it was predictable, but I think everybody worried that when you have that many colleges going back into session in Potsdam and Canton, with that many people coming from that many places, that seemed like it was ripe for the happening. Plattsburgh, same. So it'll be interesting to see what Section 7 does. A lot of Section 7, like half of the Mountain Valley, the populations of less than 200 kids in the school district. They pretty much could bubble people if they needed to. So, but yeah, I think it doesn't bode well for the winter sports season. Being able to get through the Christmas break and being able to start up in January feels like a best case scenario to me. What would you do in that case, Joe? Would you practice until January if you could, with no possibility of competition?
I would offer whatever is allowed, but right now, we're not even allowed, we can't stay after. I mean, we have a school rule. There's no staying after, and there's no, nobody is going to be able to use our gyms right now. I don't see Bob allowing that, and I totally understand why.
Yeah.
But this is where it gets frustrating. If I hear somebody else is doing it and I can't do it, that's where I'm going to get frustrated.
Yeah.
I think of my own youth basketball organization. The only way it can be run is to use the gyms at St. Lawrence Central. And right now I'm not allowed to use them. If I hear somebody else's youth basketball organization running because their school is bravado enough to allow their people to use that's going to be frustrating. To hear that the school district next to me can do this and we can't. And again, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to pin this on my super. Bob and I get along great, and I totally understand his situation. It just bothers me that we won't all be on the same page. And some kids, just because of where they live, are going to get something that others can't.
I think that door is going to open for the first time on Monday. If see you, Dave. If high school sports start on
I don't know what that is, but
Did you open up a rifle?
you got
range?
fireworks going on?
Yeah. Yeah, somebody's shooting off some fireworks right like half a block from my front door. I'm like, well, the way things are going in Old Forge, I just wondered who was getting shot next. Ooh.
Did I mute?
You had us freaked out.
Russ, you muted or mute him?
Okay.
Or?
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
So,
if
Russ,
practices start on Monday, if people start using school facilities on Monday, if the high school teams are using them, I think that's the time when, if people are going to start allowing youth sports to use their facilities, that's when we're going to see it start to happen.
but Russ, correct me if I'm wrong. So, when you were asking me if I would practice, but right now, as a high-risk sport, basketball, we can't, the only thing we could do would be individual drills and skills with social distancing, right?
Yeah. Which for a solid month sounds like a dream to any 17-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't like doing it for a week. I can imagine.
Right.
Yeah. I don't understand.
I don't know. There's a lot still going to happen. I think, everybody's going to be lucky to get out of this without shutting down. So here we go, Section 10, fall sports could start Monday. Potsdam is closed until October 3rd. Malone is closed until October 3rd, or I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th, the first week in October.
Oh, Malone is?
No, I'm sorry, Messina is.
Yeah.
So already 2 of the 5 biggest schools in the section are closed. And if you're closed, you can't practice, you can't do anything. So Salmon River, when does Salmon River go back? They might be closed until October 3rd too. So, there's 3 of your biggest Central Division schools that are not going to be starting anytime soon.
So Russ, so let's put your sports hat away and now let's go back over to your superintendent hat. How much input did you have as superintendent in all these decisions with the section? And I know there's a money pinch, big money pinch right now with the state. And if you could just elaborate on that a little bit also, I'm sure everybody would appreciate it.
Yeah, and I know that every superintendent brings their own baggage with them to the table in terms of how they prioritize what they're going to spend money on. But I've said so many times that if you take all of the positives that interscholastic sports provide to a kid, their attendance goes up, their behavior problems go down, their grades go up. If you took that and went to a superintendent blind and said, I have this program that for way less than 1% of your budget could do all of these things, they would jump on it in a heartbeat. So that is money well spent to me. And it's, again, I defy you to find a school district whose athletic budget is 1% of their total budget. It's probably closer to 0.75 at most. So yes, I know 20% is a lot, and that's, the governor did say yesterday he's going to stop withholding money through, he was cagey about what he said. He said he's going to stop withholding money for September, and kind of avoided answering whether he's going to continue to do that or not. But so I feel like, we as superintendents had a lot to say. We met 3 times with Carl, and hashed out, what everybody thought, what they were worried about. How can we mitigate the problems? How can we keep safe? And, there were people who had dissenting opinions, or people who, some people said that they asked to remain anonymous, but that regardless of what happened, their school districts are not going to play sports until at least January. So it'll be interesting to see when those decisions get made and get made public. But we've had a lot of input, and I think Carl is as good a person to put in the middle of. So if you got Section 10, you got 24 different schools, 24 different superintendents, 106 different opinions. And you can put Carl in the middle of that room, and he can talk everybody into, if not consensus, at least feeling good about the decision they're making. So, I defy you to find a better person to bring everybody together, allow their voice to be heard, and take their input and try to fold it into the final decision.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in anybody's shoes right now, to be honest with you.
No.
We had our middle grandson stay the night with us today. I got to tell you the story. Stayed overnight with us last night, and he had classes he had to do this morning. Just trying to hook up to the school's computer just to go through it. I can't imagine what's going on in the back. It was driving me batty just trying to watch him hook up. So I can't imagine how this remote thing is going for everybody. There's got to be a lot of hiccups along the way, and I guess we all got to work through it. And I can't imagine what you're going through with all that.
Yeah, and for the classroom teachers who have, 10 live kids in front of them and 10 kids checking in on the live stream at the same time and trying to manage all of that, I'll be honest, people, when we came back to school, I think for the first 4 or 5 hours, everyone was elated to be back. School is an incredibly social place. So everybody was super happy to be back in the building and see the people they haven't seen in 6 months. And everybody was upbeat, and it was positive and happy. And then they went in their rooms, and you had to take a minute and sit down at some point and go, now, how in the hell am I going to do this? That's when I think kind of the frustration set in, and the reality of all of it. So it was a tough couple of days, and then kids showed up on Tuesday, and it just started happening. So I think being able, a lot of the kids were in that same boat. Like, I just want to be back in school. Some of the hardest core kids that I went around and around with over the past couple of years, where I just can't wait back in school. Glad to see you, Mr. Bartlett. Good to see you. And some of those kids are there because if it wasn't for being able to play football or basketball or whatever over the last few years, they may or may not still be there. And I worry about what's going to happen over the next 6 months if we don't have something to hook them into school.
Yeah,
I was wondering how many new soccer players you got this season.
So the idea that volleyball is not happening until the spring, and that a student who, for this year only, a student athlete is allowed to play 4 sports seasons. So the old soccer coach in me, who rued the day that volleyball became a fall sport, was thinking, this will be good.
I've had a few swimmers jump over to play soccer. I haven't had any football players as of yet to jump over to play soccer, but I've had some swimmers that are going to swim or going to play soccer now just to do something.
Yeah. You were still going to play 11-man football, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. One of the biggest issues we had was we made the switch to 8-man football 3 years ago. And we play almost exclusively Section 3 teams. So that degree of travel was always going to be tough for us.
Well, and something we haven't talked about, I know we want to kind of wrap this up. We want to keep you here all night, Russ, but one of the, right now we're dealing with the present. I think you and I are thinking ahead, but I don't think parents and, especially parents aren't thinking ahead to the ramifications. Even if this gets solved tomorrow, that is going to cause for the next couple of years at least. And I'm just quickly off the top of my head is and Section 10 football will be greatly impacted by this, even if we play in March. Because it is going to be number one, hard to get it in that weather. Number two, if we don't play, that's a whole year without that sport being played at all, because you don't have youth football like
Right.
you do all the other youth sports or travel football. The only football that gets played is third, fourth, and fifth. They don't have AAU football.
Yeah.
So that sport will be impacted greatly, I feel.
And I feel like, it'll be hard to play football in March. I think for most of the state north of the Thruway, not even an option. I mean, I can't tell you as an athletic director over however many years, I don't even think I could give you a significant number of times our spring sports teams have been outside to practice before May 1st.
Yeah.
This past spring would have been the
Absolutely.
a good one.
Yeah. Best spring ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're losing years of player development. You got your 7th and 8th grade modified kids who you watch them over the course of one modified season. That's not going to happen. So that's going to be all year later. What you're going to see going forward is definitely going to reflect not having played a season for, like you said, for a few years.
Yeah, that was my biggest concern, is that the seniors of 2020 lost all their spring sports. And moving forward, now you get the kids walking into this year and they don't know where their sports are going to be now. They're already losing their fall. Supposedly some are going to get pushed up to spring. I don't want to be the kid or the parent that wants to make that decision in spring. Which sport do I play? So I just don't see any of this turning out well. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be hitting it right on the nose, Russ, that maybe we don't have winter sports.
I've said jokingly for a lot of years, you could cancel your English department and 3 people show up at a board meeting slightly perturbed about it. If you delay the start of the football season, you have the entire town there with pitchforks and axes and, pushing football off is one thing. If you start talking about canceling basketball season in New York State, there is going to be a pushback. No question about it.
Yeah. People are they're hungry. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're so right, Russ. And so really, the last thing I want to say is, for me as an athletic director, having to go through this right now, number one, I've said this constantly on all my interviews, my radio interviews. I've said it on this show. The people of St. Lawrence Central have been absolutely unbelievably understanding so far. They have left me alone because really there's nothing I can tell them. All they have to do is watch the news. They get the updates the way I get the updates, really. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I will say, this is hard when you have 49 other states in the union, and you see other states doing things that we think we should be doing because the numbers say that we're okay. But I also understand our numbers are okay because we're not doing these things. So it's such a give and take, but I get it. And I am of the like, I don't think I think parents are happy, and I get it, but I think they just think sports is back. It's not back. Yeah. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Yeah. I can't believe I'm saying it, but the way I feel is if we can't do it the way it's meant to be done, and that's with wearing a mask, social distancing, and doing everything that we've been doing. But if we can't do it the way it's meant to be done, I just soon not do it, because I think it's going to be almost unenjoyable. But I'll do everything I can to make it as enjoyable as possible. But I think you know where I'm coming from on this.
I definitely do. And I was sort of there, and I stopped for a bit, and I thought, I think you and I think that because we're coming from a perspective of having coached for 20 years, we've had 20 seasons, you're talking about a kid that's got 4 at best. Losing one of those 4 to them is an awful lot more impactful than it is to you or I losing one. So, I get that it's passionate, and I get where they're coming from. The only consolation I think there could possibly be is that, it's a historical thing. Like this is not going to happen again in our lifetime, I hope. This is such an unprecedented time. I think with the wisdom of becoming 30 years old somewhere down the road, the kids that are 15 and 16 right now that think this is the most unjust thing that's ever happened to them, I get where they're coming from right now. So it's
Right.
Well, and I will say, Russ, too, that all being said, the coach in me has already, if we're lucky enough to have a basketball season of any sort, I have a game plan in mind, and it has nothing to do with winning a sectional championship. I can tell you that.
Absolutely.
It will be all about putting smiles on kids' faces and just being together. And that's that's the thing I miss the most. I mean, I miss being with my kids. I haven't seen them in so long. It's frustrating, and I hope that that's what they're looking for. And that's what I'm going to do this fall as the athletic director at SLC is just preach togetherness, and hey, you got a chance to be together, and let's make the most out of this that we can. Yeah.
I'm so old that there are, I don't know, I could probably make a soccer team of former soccer players that now are teachers in the district. And I was talking to one today, and she was saying, is soccer going to happen? And I said, well, I'm going to start on Monday, so I don't know if we'll get any games in, but, we'll see what happens. And she said, I don't remember a single game from my high school career. I remember 1,000 things that happened in practice. I don't remember a single game. And I thought, there you go. There's some perspective for you.
You're absolutely right. And the last thing I'm going to say before Pete and Dave can wrap this up, but the last thing I want to say.
Can I just go on the record as pointing out that this is the third last thing you're going to say?
Last thing I'm going to say.
Happens all the time.
For all of my fellow athletic directors, for all of our superintendents, for Dr. Zayas, and especially for Carl Normandin, I hope people realize we are just following rules. We are just following the rules that have been set down to us from above. We aren't making them. We're following them. And you got to cut us some slack here, people. And I hope our viewers, usually, they're all friends of the show, spread the word and help us out, because we're going to need it. And we're just following rules. That's all we're doing. Doesn't mean that we like it, but we're going to fight. We're all people that follow rules, and we'll do what we're told to do, because that's our job. So I just hope everybody will understand that. And Russ, thank you. Thank Dr. Zayas. I thank NISFA for everything that you guys have done to try to give us something.
Appreciate that. You're right. We're not making rules. What we're doing at this point is trying to find a way through the existing rules to provide an opportunity. And, to the extent
the best and safest way that you can. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Russ, I thank you very much for coming on the show at short notice. Dave got a hold of you, I think, last night and said, hey, you want to come on today? So we appreciate it. And we do want to pick your brain a little bit more going forward. So we will be in touch, and we really appreciate you coming on.
Small tweezers if you're going to pick my brain, Pete.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Same thing here. That's going to be it tonight for ESS Empire State Sports. Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, Pete Gosla, and our special guest, Russ Bartlett, saying good night, everybody, and stay safe.